The night I stopped eating anything Serena touched. My husband watched my fork more closely than he watched my face. I was sitting at our dining table in Raleigh, with the same white plates, the same lemon candles, the same people who had watched me disappear after dinner for years. Owen had one hand resting near his water glass, too still to be casual, while Serena lowered the salad beside me with that careful little smile she used when other people were looking. I touched the fork to the edge of the plate, smiled like the tired wife they expected, and decided that nothing on that plate would pass my lips. For 6 years, I had been told the missing pieces were mine to explain, because stress could do strange things and memory could be unreliable. Owen never mocked me, never raised his voice, never called me broken in front of anyone, because his gentleness worked better than cruelty ever could. Serena always arrived with something chilled, something pretty, something she could portion out herself while murmuring, "Let me take care of you tonight." That sentence used to sound like friendship, until I noticed she only looked relaxed after I took the first bite. That night, I gave them the performance they had written for me, only I changed the ending without telling them. Owen leaned closer and murmured that I should eat something, because I always felt worse when I skipped dinner. Serena added that she made it lighter for me, and Caleb kept talking too loudly about a client who never paid on time. Brianna looked from Serena's hands to Owen's jaw, and for the first time, I wondered whether someone else had seen the room tilt before I did. The hour that usually stole me came and went, and I stayed clear enough to hear Owen's breathing change. Serena asked twice if I wanted more salad, then stopped asking when she realized my plate looked touched but not eaten. I laughed at the right places, moved my napkin once, and let them believe I was still the easiest woman in the room to explain away. By the time they left, I knew my body had not been betraying me, because the only thing different that night was what I refused to swallow. By the time I understood what Owen and Serena had been doing, the cruelest part was not the food, or the dizziness, or the missing hours. It was the way they had trained everyone around me to hear my memory as unreliable before I ever opened my mouth. Owen never mocked my body, never called me weak, never made the mistake of sounding like a man who wanted his wife diminished. He used softer tools, sitting beside me after each episode, rubbing my shoulder while murmuring, "Stress can distort things. Ken, you know that." Serena played the other half so cleanly that I used to feel guilty for suspecting her, because guilt was exactly what she counted on. She arrived every week with something chilled and pretty, then moved through my kitchen like a woman who had earned the right to touch everything. "Let me plate yours," she would say, smiling before Caleb and Brianna could notice how quickly Owen stopped watching her and started watching me. When I woke later with 20 blank minutes missing, Serena always looked wounded by my confusion, as if my questions hurt her more than my fear hurt me. What made it believable was how ordinary the room looked while they rewrote me inside it. One careful dinner after another. There were linen napkins, grocery store flowers, Brianna laughing too late at Caleb's jokes, and Owen explaining my silence before I could explain it myself. If I asked why my glass had moved, he remembered me moving it. And if I questioned that, Serena remembered it too. Two people agreeing calmly can make one woman sound unstable, especially when both of them know she still loves them. But I had never been as uncertain as they needed me to be, and that became the mistake they never saw. I kept notes without telling Owen, not the emotional kind he encouraged, but exact ones about plates, times, hands, glances, and repeated phrases. I noticed Serena only relaxed after I swallowed, and Owen only became tender after the room began slipping sideways. They taught me to doubt my memory. Not my body, but my memory had been quietly collecting receipts the whole time. The first test I ran was not dramatic, because dramatic women are easier for careful men to dismiss. I changed one thing, only one, and let the rest of that Raleigh dinner behave exactly as it always had. Serena brought the chilled salad in a glass bowl, Owen opened the door before she rang, and Caleb walked in behind Brianna with grocery store flowers. I smiled at every normal thing in the room, because normal was the costume they had been using against me. I told them my stomach felt unsettled, then poured myself water and let Serena reach for my plate anyway. Just a little. "Hey," she breathed, already serving me before I answered, while Owen's eyes dropped from my face to her hands. I touched the fork to the greens, moved one tomato aside, and made the smallest performance out of being a tired wife trying. When Caleb started filling the silence with a story about an overdue client, I noticed Brianna watching Serena instead of listening to him. Serena asked if I wanted dressing, then asked again 3 minutes later, and the second question carried a pressure friendship was never supposed to have. The hour that usually took me apart passed over the table without touching me, and I stayed clear enough to count every reaction. Owen's thumb began tapping against his glass, quiet and fast, while Serena's smile held too long around the corners. I laughed once at Caleb, nodded once at Brianna, and kept my plate looking disturbed enough to satisfy anyone not studying me. Maybe I just needed to eat slower, I offered softly, and Serena answered too quickly. "No, you need to eat enough. Kendall." That was the moment I stopped treating my fear like a feeling and started treating it like evidence. A real friend would have been relieved that I stayed upright, but Serena looked irritated by my clarity. A loving husband would have relaxed when my voice stayed steady, but Owen kept waiting for something that refused to happen. After they left, I saved the untouched portion for independent testing, because I needed a question no one could smooth over with concern. The independent test came back on a Tuesday morning while I was shelving donor records at the library and pretending my hands were steady. The report did not name my fear for me, but it confirmed the food had been altered with something that did not belong there. It was enough to make the room around me sharpen, because the question was no longer whether my memory had failed me. The question was, who had been confident enough to make failure look like my habit for years? I folded the report into my purse, finished my shift, and drove home without calling Owen. I waited until his car was gone before I opened the cabinet where he kept the family papers he always said were too boring for me. There were tax folders, warranty envelopes, insurance notices, and then a new life policy tucked between old mortgage statements like a secret wearing office clothes. My name sat on the first page, clean and formal, beside language about risk history and recurring unexplained episodes. I stared at those words until I recognized them, because Owen had used the same phrases while guiding my hand over my own journal. "Write it exactly," he used to murmur, gentle as a prayer, so nobody misunderstands what happened. That was when I understood the trap had never been only the dinners, because Owen had been building a paper version of me. On paper, I was forgetful, fragile, prone to confusion, and embarrassed enough to refuse real help whenever witnesses were present. In our house, I was the wife who questioned her glass, her plate, her own recollection, while two calm people corrected me together. Serena had not simply stood beside him during the lie, because her words lived inside it too. Her messages sat open on our shared tablet, casual and cold, complaining that I was getting harder to predict. I did not read them like a wife looking for an affair, because the affair had already become the least surprising thing in that room. I read them like a woman checking timestamps, repeated phrases, and the places where affection turned into planning. Serena wrote that I needed to stay inside the old story a little longer, and Owen answered that I was almost there. I closed the tablet, copied nothing yet, touched nothing else, and let the house stay exactly as they expected it. Then I called the investigator Denise Hart, who listened without interrupting and left me with one sentence: "Do not confront people who are still editing the ending." I did not walk into the Raleigh police station looking like a woman begging someone to believe her over her husband. I walked in with Denise Hart beside me, a folder against my ribs, and the independent test folded behind copies of Owen's insurance papers. Detective Marla Benton listened without softening her face, which I respected, because pity would have made me feel smaller than the evidence. When she asked what I wanted, I slid the folder across and answered, "I want to know what survives a prosecutor." Marla read the food report first, then the policy, then the notes Owen had trained me to write in my own careful handwriting. Her finger stopped on the phrase, "recurring, unexplained episodes." The same phrase Owen had whispered like concern while making my journal sound clinical. "Who always touched your plate?" she asked, and I felt Denise shift beside me before I answered. "Serena Pike." Marla looked back down, turned one page, and asked, "Who always explained you before anyone called for help?" "Owen," I said, and the room seemed to settle around the answer like it had been waiting for me to catch up. Marla did not call it proof yet, and that restraint told me she understood exactly how men like Owen survived suspicion. One altered meal could be challenged, one policy could be explained, and one wife with gaps in her memory could be made to sound unreliable. But a pattern had weight, and mine had plates, phrases, witnesses, private messages, and money sitting beside each other. Marla explained that we would not confront them, because confrontation gave guilty people time to become better storytellers. She wanted clean records, preserved messages, witness statements, and one controlled dinner where nobody allowed danger to outrun the case. "You are not bait," she made clear, watching my face until I nodded. "And you do not improvise because you get angry." I told her anger was not the problem anymore, because anger had been replaced by something colder and more useful. The plan was simple enough to scare me because it used the same room they had already taught me to fear. I would host dinner, let Serena behave normally, let Owen perform concern, and let the police decide when intent had spoken loudly enough. Marla asked if I was sure I could sit across from them without tipping my hand, and I thought about Serena's hands on my plate. "No," I answered, standing with the folder lighter in my arms, "but I can sit still longer than they think." The last dinner began so politely that, for one dangerous second, I understood how people survive inside lies for years. I roasted chicken, warmed bread, folded napkins beside the white plates, and let the house smell like nothing terrible had happened there. Serena arrived with the glass bowl against her hip, smiling like a woman, bringing comfort instead of a question answered. Owen kissed my cheek in front of Caleb and Brianna, gentle and practiced, and I smiled back because Marla had warned me not to interrupt. Serena set the salad down and reached for my plate before anyone had taken a full breath, her bracelet clicking against the rim. "I made the kind you like," she murmured, and Owen's hand settled between my shoulders as if his concern had been waiting. I let my eyes lower, let my voice thin, and answered, "I'm just a little tired tonight," while Caleb shifted in his chair. Brianna watched Serena's hands instead of the food, and Owen brushed his thumb across my sweater with a patience that felt rehearsed. I lifted the fork, touched it to my mouth without taking anything in, and let the old room think it had me again. Serena relaxed first, just enough for her shoulders to drop, and that tiny release told me she believed the night was working. Owen became warmer, asking Caleb about work, laughing at the right places, glancing at me whenever he thought nobody noticed. Brianna noticed, because her smile kept fading whenever Owen stopped looking like a husband and started looking like a man waiting. After 20 minutes, I let my shoulders dip and placed one hand against the edge of the table. Slow enough to look familiar, Owen stood immediately, not startled, not confused, already wearing the face he used when other people needed instructions. "She's having one of her spells again," he murmured, before anyone had asked what was wrong, and Caleb's fork froze halfway to his plate. Brianna whispered that maybe they should call someone, but Owen answered too fast. "No, she hates that." Serena moved beside me, lowering her voice until friendship disappeared from it, and told Owen to take me to the den. He bent close enough for me to feel his breath near my hair and whispered that I had been asking too many questions. The front door opened before Serena could reach for my arm, and Detective Marla Benton's calm voice told everyone to step back. Owen's hand lifted away from me. Serena froze beside the chair, and I sat upright before either of them found a cleaner lie. I looked at my husband and said, "You were never waiting for me to get better. You were waiting for me to become easier to explain." The courtroom did not believe me because I cried quietly on the stand, and that was the first clean mercy I had been given in years. It believed the pattern instead. The plates, the timing, the policy, and the calm way Owen explained me before anyone had even asked me to explain. His attorney tried to make me sound jealous, exhausted, dramatic. A wife embarrassed by an affair and desperate for someone to punish publicly for humiliating me. Then Marla laid out the dinners one by one, and every ordinary detail began turning its face back toward my husband, in plain view before them. Serena sat 2 tables away from Owen, dressed like grief had been tailored for her. But she would not look directly at me even once that morning. Caleb testified first, voice unsteady, admitting Serena always handled my plate, and Owen always discouraged anyone from calling for help when I faded at dinner again. Brianna followed, quieter but sharper, remembering Serena's irritation when I skipped food, and Owen's smile when I started fading in front of them at the table. It felt rehearsed. Brianna said, and those 3 words did more damage than any speech I could have ever made for myself in that courtroom. The independent food report came next. Then the insurance policy. Then my journal phrases matched against Owen's own notes in his careful, borrowed wording from my fear. By the time the messages appeared, the affair was no longer the scandal in the room, because the affair had become the motive they shared behind me. Owen tried to look wounded when the prosecutor read Serena's line about keeping me inside the same old story just a little longer than before. Serena closed her eyes at that, not from remorse, but because she finally understood the room had stopped seeing her as my friend anymore in public. Their lawyers argued doubt, stress, coincidence, and a marriage collapsing under suspicion. But none of that survived the way each piece answered another without needing tears. I did not need to perform sanity for strangers, because the evidence had stopped asking Owen to translate me into something smaller for the jury. I told the truth. Owen was convicted. Serena lost everything her softness had protected, and I walked out carrying my own name without flinching ever again. I sold the house because some rooms can become witnesses even after the people inside them are gone. The kitchen still smelled like lemon cleaner and roasted onions, but my body remembered Serena's bracelet against the salad bowl. I did not leave Raleigh running, and I did not leave because Owen still had power over the walls. I left because peace deserved a room that had never heard him explain me before I could speak. I moved closer to the water in Wilmington, into a small apartment with wide windows and cabinets nobody else had organized. The first dinner I cooked there was plain. Chicken soup, toast, sliced apples, nothing pretty enough to hide behind. I ate standing at the counter because sitting at a table still felt like agreeing to be watched. When my hand stopped shaking halfway through the bowl, I whispered, "There you are," and finished every spoonful. Healing was not soft at first, because soft things had been used on me until softness felt suspicious. It was bills changed into my name, locks replaced, grocery lists written slowly, and mornings when nobody corrected my memory. Brianna sent one letter, short and careful, saying she should have trusted what she noticed sooner. I read it once, kept the apology, and did not give her forgiveness just to make the story prettier. Months later, I hosted dinner for 2 women from the library, and I cooked every dish myself without apologizing for it. One of them offered to bring salad next time, and my chest tightened before my mind caught up. Then I breathed, smiled, and said, "Just bring yourself. I've got the food." That was the whole victory. Not grand, not loud, just my own voice, setting the rules before fear could set them for me. I trusted my mind before I trusted another room, and that is why I survived the one built to erase me.